was the last time you got a pay rise? I'd be interested to know how far back it is since somebody actually didn't get one, if you know what I mean. Maybe you've never had one. There'd be some people probably been working for 3 or 4 years could say that. Anyway, give us a call on 131873. One person who does not want a pay rise, strangely enough, is one of a group of our federal politicians. Now, the 2% pay rise has been awarded to our politicians federally and also senior public servants by the Independent Remuneration Tribunal. So, on the face of it, it's all above board. Well, Senator David Leyonhjelm, the Liberal Democrat, says, well, maybe we shouldn't actually be giving our politicians a pay rise until they get the budget back into surplus. Maybe he's right. He's on the line right now. Many thanks for your time, David.
G'day, Ross.
So is this a case of performing, you get the pay rise? 2%'s neither here nor there, surely.
Yes, well, I mean, my view is that generally speaking, if you perform well, you deliver higher productivity for your employer, your organisation, whatever, that should be the basis for a pay rise. And largely that's true. All this complaints about lack of pay rise for most people is due to the fact that productivity hasn't been rising, and as a result, the firms that employ them haven't felt that there's been a justification for it. Now, so the question then is, okay, how do you judge the productivity and the performance, the output, if you like, of a politician? And my view is you can certainly judge them by negative factors. Sometimes you can judge them by positive factors, but a lot of disagreement about what that might be. But a negative factor is not balancing the budget, spending more money than is coming in. And our governments have been doing it now since about 2007, I think, was the last time we had a balanced budget, a proper balanced budget. And so my argument is, if we're going to give politicians a pay rise, then at least link it to something tangible in the way of performance.
Okay, so I get that, and a lot of people will sit there and nod their heads. However, of course, this covers all politicians from all political spectrums. So from that point of view, it is pretty difficult. You might be able to point at the Treasurer, the Finance Minister, maybe the Prime Minister and those in the Cabinet and say, well, you haven't balanced the books. Those on the opposition benches or on the cross benches might say, well, we don't actually have anything to do with whether the books are balanced or not. That's all up to the government. Isn't that a pretty hard measure or hurdle to put in front of a person as to whether they deserve a pay rise or not?
Well, no, incentives matter. So you might have a business that employs 10,000 people, and you only give the employees a pay rise when the productivity, the output, the performance of that business improves, and yet that the reason for that improvement in the business may be due to a handful of people. 1,000 people might get a pay rise. That wouldn't be particularly uncommon. There is a joint responsibility for politicians to, in the federal parliament, that the budget is not balanced. There's very few of them. I think I'd be one of very few who actually opposes new spending. I do it without exception. Every single proposal to increase spending, I oppose it. There wouldn't be many others who do that. And the reason that I say there is collective responsibility is excessive spending is our problem. We are spending far too much money, and the argument that we're not taxing people enough just doesn't stand up to scrutiny. We are quite highly taxed, really.
I'll tell you one last thing. I never can let you go about this because I hear all of that, and I've got to say that there are vast areas of that I agree with, especially on the spending side, because you've got to balance the budget, as you point out, and the faster you can do that, the better off the country is long term. Tell me one thing: as we get back, one reason why the budget has not been capable of being balanced, it could be argued, is because of cross-bench opposition, plus Labor and Green opposition, to many measures that have come down in the budget. Just explain to me how the Senate in particular will be constituted according to your reckoning once it sits again, given what's taken place, especially with One Nation.
Well, you're quite right. Most of the crossbench is equally culpable as Labor and the Greens for the fact that we have a budget deficit, a chronic budget deficit, and a massive debt. That's probably the bigger issue. $500, $600 billion of net debt. So I guess what's changed is not very much from the government's point of view. From my point of view, as a crossbench senator, my relationships with some of them have altered slightly. Steve Martin, for example, is now a member of the Nationals, so I'll talk to him like I talk to other Nationals. Lucy Gashui was some time ago, joined the Liberal Party, so my relationship with her is comparable to what it is with the other members of the Liberal Party. Fraser Anning's joined the Katter Australia Party. That doesn't change anything. He's the only representative of the party in the Parliament, so he is like me. I'm the only member of the Liberal Democrats. Fraser and I get on very well. We work together quite closely, and he's a very genial guy as well. The One Nation situation has no material effect on me. The fact that Brian Burston has left, hasn't left One Nation, but he has left the party room, I suppose is the right way to put it, with Pauline, and will be voting independently, is likely to lead him to look for allies elsewhere on the crossbench. And I have quite a good relationship with him, and I anticipate I'll work more closely with him. But in the end, the government will still require all of the crossbench votes except for 2. So the crossbench is now down to 10. It has been up to 12 in this Parliament. But every time, at each occasion, it has required all but 2 votes. And in fact, it's been no different from the election of the Abbott government in 2014, when the new Senate was sworn in. At that time, the government needed 6 out of 8, I think it was, crossbenchers. It has needed 10 out of 12, 9 out of 11, and now it's down to 8 out of 10. So every time, it can only afford to lose 3 votes. So in practical terms, the crossbench is just as much an issue for the government as it ever has been, whenever the Greens and Labor are on the other side.
I'll tell you, it's going to be fascinating to watch exactly how the dynamics do play out. Senator David Leyonhjelm, the head, and as he says, the only senator from the Liberal Democrats in our federal parliament. And David, I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ross.